Good afternoon, everybody. I called in this meeting so that each of you can talk about some different behaviors that suspect you of computer hacking. Each of you will have your turn to talk about one of these behaviors so that you'll be able to get your point across to everybody. There's one thing I know that seems to be hacking on people, and it revolves around declaring a person refusing to improve their behavior when they told you about how it has to be fixed through neurophysiology. How does that relate to computer hacking? Whenever you declare a person refusing to improve their behavior when they told you about how it has to be done through neurophysiology, it makes them look responsible for how they were born. That's likely to show people that you're planning to forge somebody's medical records and change them to look like their behavior is bad and slander them. Declaring somebody refusing in that situation convinces people that you're about to tap into a computer system to attempt to have that person institutionalized over something that they need specialty help with. That's a good point. One thing I know that seems to be hacking on people is when you say to a person who's tired of you annoying them with things that they hate that they have to change their behavior for that. What makes you so sure that that has anything to do with computer hacking? Whenever you say things like you have to patent off being bad to patent off taking what I give to you, it's like telling them that they don't deserve any security from being harassed. People see that as you wanting to get into their computer system to try and change its functioning to not be able to foresee the links in behavior. I believe you. One thing I know that seems to be hacking on people is not comprehending with a sign that says, "This is what my plan for the next 100 days or whole year, whether I'm right or wrong." How can you be so sure that that relates to computer hacking? Whenever, as a parent, you've been punishing that child outside of the acceptable boundaries, if that child isn't so naive, he or she would establish a 100-day or whole year off of you doing those things to them. If, as a parent, when you don't comply with that plan, people suspect you of hacking because they're so sure that you're trying to add something into that plan that's not supposed to be there. Like what? The purpose of having a 100-day plan outside of being punished out of bounds is to help you foresee the causes of those behaviors and to learn about what's needed to remedy those problems. By continuing to go by the deal of behavior coinciding with the plan, you're not being honest with the fact that you're failing to go by the plan as it's written. There's no two-way street after the arranged stopping day with what you don't want. Either you're agreeing to go by the written plan or you're not. If you're not going by the plan as it's written, either you're saying, as long as you have this plan, I'm going to harass you about all of these things that you don't like. Or you're simply saying, I'm not going to go by that plan. By keeping the deal to a two-way street, it's like lying to them about you saying that you're not going by the written plan. People consider that hacking because they're so sure that you're planning on carving a security card or password to match somebody else's. Good thinking, Red and Black Sam. Another way of seeing what Red and Black Sam said about hacking related to making a 100-day record of not getting punished out of bounds has something to do with following people around with ratings. What makes you so sure of that? Suppose you set up a rating plan based on not getting something you don't deserve to earn a point, whatever you did. That legend is yours and only you can change it. If somebody else is following you around with ratings and thinking like your point sheet plan only works according to your behavior and not realizing that it's about not getting those annoying things. It's like stalking. You're right about that, but how does it refer to computer hacking? People easily suspect a person following somebody around with ratings as a person who intends to tap into the computer system where the voting ballots are stored and change them. In other words, they're planning to rig an election when it's time for one. I believe you're right about that. I've known people who have no respect for somebody who says that they have some new words and responses that they go by after a certain date. Like what? I'm using the word plus for example because it's spoken the most. When somebody says that they don't go by that certain word anymore after a certain date and they have a new one that they go by, it makes you look disrespectful even if you did it by accident. It's even worse when you withhold them by saying, just because you're graduated from taking that word or response doesn't mean that I'm graduated from saying that word to you. Good point, Blue and Yellow, Sam. The end of saying certain words doesn't work like that. Whenever a person says that they don't take a certain word or response anymore, you giving it to them stops immediately as they stop taking it. Same day, same hour, same minute, same second, same millisecond. I've even known somebody who says, "Shame on you," to a person who forgets that they go by a new word or response. Accidentally saying that certain word after that certain date counts as failing too. If you do it to your parents or legal guardians, all they do is say no to your new word and response plan later on. That's because it's disrespectful to your elders to shame them even when they're wrong. I wouldn't blame a parent for saying no to the new plan when that child shames them, because I don't think it's very nice to make them feel chastised for forgetting the plan. But how do you refer such forgetfulness of saying a new word or response to computer hacking? It may have something to do with wanting to forge somebody's medical records by adding a certain medicine into their health plan and trying to cure a problem somebody has that's related to a fixed situation, or a person who has an allergy to certain medicines and trying to tamper with their health. I could bet my bottom dollar that that's what you're saying is true, Blue and Yellow Sam. Blue and Yellow Sam seems to have a good point, Uncle Sam. I especially don't like it when a person says things like, if you don't want to hear the word fuss, then stop doing it, after the date in which they said they'd go by a different word. I agree with you, because if that person told you about the new word that they go by when they have problems, it's like telling them that they don't deserve an arranged stopping day in a dishonest way. I could easily picture somebody using their attitude to change a prohibition sign to saying the opposite of what it means, especially through a computer system. I can too. I've had complaints about how some parents or guardians or teachers start out thinking that that child really doesn't need what they offer because it doesn't fit the wrongdoings that they do, and then changing their minds without foreseeing the problem. I know all about that, because whenever that child says that they don't accept those offers anymore, it's because there's something about their wrongdoing that needs special repair done to it. They say things like, I thought you were graduated too, but I guess not because of what you seem to do that's wrong. That really doesn't foresee the problem clear enough. A lot of parents use graduate in the wrong context, because they're saying you're through with accepting what you've been offered by your parents or guardians or teachers is called patenting. Patenting gives the right of way to the takers so that you can foresee the problem clearly, and I know what to do then. I could easily picture a person who talks like that tapping into the federal building's computer system and forging somebody's police records. That would falsify somebody who has a criminal record, allowing them more freedom when they really don't deserve it. It would also falsify somebody whose criminal charges were dismissed into them still remaining at the bad end of the law. I think you're right, Blue and Black Sam. From what Blue and Black Sam said about such a person lamely saying, I thought you were graduated from that too, I learned about how somebody willfully says, I don't care about you being free of what I give you, I still have the legal right to give it to you anyway. That sounds like willfully refusing to respect somebody who has a new way to handle things. Whenever there's a new way to go by something, that new way would never work if somebody didn't go by it, whether assertively or passively. That seems to be pretty logical, if you know what I mean. It's easy to picture somebody acting like that as somebody who intends to tap into a school's computer system and alter the learning procedures through changing what's written in the database. I believe that very well. One thing I know very well that seems to relate to computer hacking is somebody who willfully disregards somebody's situation and what you give to them. How do you know that? When it comes to willfully disregarding somebody's situation, it proves that you want to change one good scenario into a bad one, and that's mainly done through computer hacking. What's an example of that, Yellow and Green Sam? Suppose you know a road or trail situation that doesn't go according to a traffic functions, and you want to lay it out correctly, but somebody you're with, whether a parent or guardian or teacher or some immature peer of yours, is arguing with you about that scenario like it's whatever way anybody wants it. Can you give me an example of that? You look at the trail intersection and it doesn't fit right, because you really can't have sudden turns directly at an intersection, but they just willfully refuse to go by the intersection trail that works functionally and say things to you like, it goes this way sometimes according to me and your way sometimes. I think I understand what you're driving at, Yellow and Green Sam. I could easily picture a person like that tapping into the construction contractor's computer system and altering the planning to go the wrong way. I think you're right about that. One thing I know that seems to revolve around computer hacking is when somebody says to a person, it's open when you do those things when an area is closed. What's an example of that? In a classroom where the teacher is in charge of knowing when to send a student to timeout and it's closed for the first 15 minutes of the school day and the last 10 minutes of the day, he or she is not allowed to open it within those times. That's the right way to run your classroom so that you can ensure that your students maintain their responsibilities. It's also closed because a school day is too short for timeout, or it's a certain day that you can only have once in the school year. That sounds fair, just to ensure that their students get done with their work within that short day. But then the original teacher or the substitute teacher decides to say it's open when their behavior is wrong. That proves that you really don't know that closed means closed regardless of their behavior. This area is closed for timeout. It's a two-way outage. That's right, yellow and black, Sam, because the two-way street only exists when the place is open. Enclosed means their behavior doesn't open at all. A two-way street on a closed area or right-of-way scenario does not exist. This seems to be true when a child says that they're taking the summer off of grounding and or no you're not because of getting too much of it over the school year. The parent or guardian of them needs to consider that if they're giving it to them more than they deserve it, that's the ornament of fairness and equity, so that that child will be able to enjoy their youth, and the parent or guardian will be able to learn about how punishment can easily go out of bounds. If they refer their planned partnering it to their behavior, it's like dishonestly saying no to them without a reason to do it. Their season off of grounding and or no you're not won't work on a two-way street no matter how hard you try. That's a good point, yellow and black, Sam. One thing that seems to revolve around computer hacking relates to a teacher saying to the line leader, if you don't wait up for us, I'm going to get a new line leader and you'll be captain at the back of the ship. A lot of teachers do that because they're responsible for keeping the whole class together. True, but that doesn't explain about a student who isn't capable of slowing down for everybody else no matter how hard they try. I guess you're right. Some line leaders say things like, you can't get a new line leader because only the person wearing this captain helmet gets to like me. That may be okay, but the teacher of the line has authority over every student, including the one with the captain helmet on, because of their responsibility for everybody. Trying to challenge their authority is a good way to end up not being allowed in that class or club. I think I understand, but a teacher who talks like that is likely to act like a guided tour leader that's not certified and possibly tap into the tour guide's computer system and unauthorizedly enter their name in there. It looks like another way to describe this computer hacking issue. One thing I seem to know that possibly relates to computer hacking is when a person you're talking to about what you know about what another person says refers it to the same thing that they said. What's one example of that? Whenever a child knows about what somebody told them about how to earn what they want to their parent or guardian, and then the guardian says, Anonymous says you must do this or that to earn what you want, without even acting about who they are and locating them to talk to them, I think that's rather inappropriate even for a parent or guardian who thinks that it's a traditional response that they use. That's considered interdicting. I could easily picture somebody who talks like that as a parent who's trying to impersonate a teacher without a certificate to be allowed to be one. They could easily tap into the school's computer system and try to teach a class without a teacher's degree. I'll bet my bottom dollar that you're right. One thing I think is most likely to suspect you of computer hacking is when even a parent or guardian says things like, the law says you're going to do what I tell you. I could easily picture that as hacking because it's like impersonating an authority and unlawfully imprisoning that child or teenager and being despicable and all. I've seen and heard how a child or teenager who's not so naive would say to that parent or guardian, you're not everything I'm part of just because you're my mom, only to hear them contradict him or her. They do that to help them be safe from unlawful imprisonment. Even children and teenagers and people with disability are free from being illegally imprisoned. Sometimes a parent or guardian will say things that refer what the law or a certain rule said to themselves in a demanding manner where it involves the response, me, as in mind me. If I was the one who was under that kind of parent or guardian, I would say, I don't follow directions from a person who talks like that to me. That's a good way to prove that you're smarter than that person who demands you. But then, such a despicable parent will contradict them like such a child or teenager can't have any rights, and that's where all of the confrontation begins. This is especially true when they tell you in detail what you won't do or where you won't go. I wouldn't blame that child or teenager for the sake of protecting them from being held unlawfully imprisoned. When such a parent or guardian starts standing near them until they answer back to an agreement that they really don't require, I can easily picture how such a child would say, you got 10 seconds and you won't get out of here, so will you be. I could easily picture a child or teenager doing that to their parent or guardian as a way to defend themselves from an undeserved deal. It would get to the point of that child or teenager making physical threats to make that spectating parent or guardian leave, which would then escalate into talking with the police and security and then a visit to community court. That would place a police record on that child or teenager, which could easily lead them to parent abuse charges. It's such a sinful thing to do when you state what the law says about that child or client of yours obeying because it falls under 1. Making them live by more rules than everybody else, and 2. Not allowing them to do something without a reason at all. Both of those behaviors are unadaptable because the person who accepts them either goes hungry for what they deserve or gets in trouble with the law for challenging them back. I could easily picture a parent or guardian like that tapping into the police department's computer system and illegally entering their name into their system without an officer training certificate. I think so too. I'd like to add on to what Green and White Sam was saying about a parent or guardian stating to a child or teenager what the law says about them doing what you tell them, related to saying that you're the police of them at all times. That's a good addition to what Green and White Sam said, because that's partly related to what he said too. A child or teenager who's not so naive would have reported that to the police department for impersonating a police officer as a way to keep them out of the path of being illegally imprisoned. I agree, because such unadaptable and despicable behavior makes you look like an evil person about to possess a child or teenager, and that's wrong. I could easily picture a parent or guardian like that tapping into the police department's computer system to pose themselves as police, just like what Green and White Sam said. I agree with you. All of the stories that you heard from all of these SIMs are truly known as computer hacking, and you need to understand that. If you want to stop computer hacking and these heavy security rules in the computer system, you must agree with all that he said about behaviors that suspect you of computer hacking. Unless you make an agreement to what we just finished talking about, there will be no way to stop hackers without padlocking and saying no to a person with a USB key. In fact, the best way to approve of allowing somebody to enter a vile need into somebody's computer system is to have them look down the following list of behaviors that suspect them of computer hacking. If they agree with all it says with their name signed on the paper, they become permitted to enter their vital information onto the computer system with their USB key so that the new information can go on there if need be. If people abide by the dialogue that we just finished, there will be no more need to worry about computer viruses.